In the tranquil forest of Jetavana, the Buddha sat beneath a towering sal tree, radiating serenity. Monks gathered around him, their eyes filled with reverence and anticipation for his teachings. A soft breeze carried the fragrance of blooming jasmines, mingling with the murmur of a nearby stream. The Buddha's gentle gaze swept across the assembly, his presence exuding peace and wisdom. "Monks," he began, his voice as calm as the still waters of a lotus pond. "Observe this stream before us." His hand gestured toward the clear, flowing water, reflecting the dappled sunlight. Its waters are pure, quenching the thirst of all who approach, offering sustenance without judgment. The disciples nodded, their hearts open to his words, eager to grasp the profound lesson hidden within. "Now consider," the Buddha continued, "if one were to stir this stream recklessly, would its waters remain clear and life-sustaining?" A disciple named Upali hesitated before responding, his voice thoughtful and measured. "No, Blessed One, the stream would become muddied, losing its clarity and purity." The Buddha continued, "Negative news, like echoes in the mountains, grows louder the more we respond with fear." He turned to his trusted disciple, Ananda, and said, "Fetch me a stone from the stream nearby." The monks leaned closer, their attention unwavering, as the Buddha's words unfolded layers of meaning. Yet, when we allow desires to swirl unchecked within us, our minds become clouded, obscuring wisdom and compassion. His words hung in the air, resonating deeply within the assembly. "Consider a man," the Buddha continued, "consumed by his craving for wealth, blinded by the glitter of gold and silver." His voice carried the weight of 1,000 truths, each syllable a seed of enlightenment. Such a man, in his pursuit, neglects the joy of simple sustenance, the beauty of a contented heart. Indeed, the Buddha said, just as the waters remain calm without the stone, so can the mind without fear. The villager, though calmer now, spoke again, "But what if the fears are justified? Should we not act to address them?" The Buddha smiled gently and replied, "Action born of clarity serves the world, but action born of fear clouds its purpose." The rustle of leaves and the chirping of birds seemed to pause, as if the forest itself listened. And so, he continued, his days become a ceaseless chase, his nights restless with dreams of unattainable treasures. The bamboo bends with the wind, yet remains rooted, distinguished by observing, without resistance or judgment. A gentle sigh escaped the assembly, a collective release of tension as understanding began to dawn. "Gold," the Buddha said, "is but a tool, neither virtuous nor vile, its value determined by the heart that wields it." The Buddha paused, his gaze sweeping over his disciples, each face etched with silent contemplation. "Do you see, dear monks," he asked, "how unawareness fuels the cycle of suffering, chaining us to the wheel of samsara?" A monk named Ananda raised his hand, his voice steady yet tinged with curiosity. "Master," he said, "how can we break free from this cycle and purify our minds?" "Through awareness," the Buddha replied, his voice as clear and steady as a temple bell. "Awareness is the key to liberation, the light that dispels the shadows of ignorance and craving." The Buddha placed his hands together, a gesture of unity and focus. As he continued, "When we consume with mindfulness, we honor the interconnectedness of all life, embracing gratitude and wisdom." A disciple named Sariputta, known for his keen insight, spoke up, his words measured and respectful. "Blessed One," he said, "how can we cultivate such mindfulness in our daily lives?" The Buddha's gaze rested on Sariputta, his expression serene and encouraging. "Begin with the small acts," he said, "for in them lies the foundation of a mindful existence. Consider the food you eat," the Buddha said, gesturing toward a simple bowl of rice placed before him. "Each grain represents the labor of many hands. the generosity of countless beings, the bounty of the earth. The disciples listened intently, their gazes fixed on the bowl as if it held the secrets of the universe. To consume with gratitude, the Buddha continued, is to acknowledge the web of life that sustains you. Likewise, he said, be mindful of the words you speak, the thoughts you harbor, and the sights you seek. His voice, though gentle, carried the weight of a profound truth, each word a thread in the fabric of his teaching. For what you take in through your senses and mind shapes the clarity of your heart and spirit. The Buddha's words lingered, their resonance vibrating through the souls of his disciples. Imagine, he said, a jar filled with clear water, into which a single drop of dye is introduced. The monks pictured the image in their minds. The clarity of the water disrupted by the ink's presence. Even one unskillful thought or action, the Buddha explained, can ripple through the mind, coloring its essence. But, he added, his voice lifting with a note of hope, just as the water can be cleared, so too can the mind be purified. The disciples nodded, their hearts alight with the realization of their own potential for growth and transformation. Through the practice of mindfulness, the Buddha said, you can still the ripples and restore the pristine flow of awareness. A young monk named Rahula, his eyes wide with earnest curiosity, posed a question. Master, he asked, what if one falters in mindfulness and succumbs to unwholesome desires? The Buddha's gaze softened further, his expression one of boundless compassion. Rahula, he said, to falter is human, and to recognize one's misstep is the beginning of awakening. Do not despair, the Buddha continued, for every moment offers the opportunity to return to the path with renewed determination. His words fell like gentle rain on the fertile soil of the disciples' minds, nurturing seeds of hope and resilience. The practice of mindfulness, he said, is not about perfection but about perseverance. The journey of a lifetime, the Buddha concluded, his voice a whisper yet resounding with the clarity of truth. Reflect on your own consumption, dear monks, and let awareness guide you toward liberation from the cycle of desire. The assembly bowed in reverence, their hearts brimming with gratitude for the Buddha's profound wisdom. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues across the forest, the disciples remained in meditative silence, contemplating the path of mindful living. Another day, the Buddha sat beneath the spreading branches of a banyan tree, surrounded by his devoted disciples. The morning air was cool and carried the scent of wildflowers, adding to the tranquility of the setting. The Buddha's gaze rested softly upon his disciples, his voice a steady and calming presence. Monks, he began, what do you bring back from the world beyond Jetavana? His question carried the weight of curiosity, yet his tone remained gentle and encouraging. Ananda, a disciple known for his sharp observation, replied, Master, we walked through the village and witnessed a family laboring tirelessly in the fields. The Buddha's eyes held a depth of understanding as he listened, his expression inviting the continuation of the tale. The father worked under the relentless sun, the mother bore baskets of grain, and the children followed the rhythm of toil. Ananda continued, his words painted a vivid image in the minds of the assembly, evoking empathy for the family's laborious life. They appeared weary, yet there was no trace of bitterness or resentment in their faces. Only a quiet contentment, Ananda added. The Buddha nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful, as if considering the significance of their observations. Monks, the Buddha said, his voice infused with compassion, do you understand the source of their contentment amidst the struggles of life? The disciples exchanged thoughtful glances, pondering the meaning behind the Buddha's question. That family knows the balance between their needs and the labor required to fulfill them. And thus, they live harmoniously, the Buddha explained. His words carried the gentle resonance of truth, each syllable a thread weaving wisdom into the hearts of his listeners. The father does not toil for excess. The mother carries what sustains. And the children work to uphold their shared life, he continued. The disciples leaned forward, eager to grasp the wisdom embedded in this observation, the simplicity of its profundity. In striving only to meet their needs, they escape the burden of excess and the suffering that arises from unskillful consumption, the Buddha added. His gaze swept across the assembly, resting on each face in turn, his presence grounding and illuminating. Monks, the Buddha said, reflect on your own lives and the simplicity of your alms food. What do you observe? A disciple named Upali spoke, his voice hesitant yet sincere. Master, the food sustains us, and we accept it with gratitude and humility. The Buddha's lips curved into a soft smile, acknowledging the disciple's insight. Indeed, he said, to accept what sustains with mindfulness is the foundation of liberation from the chains of excess. The sound of rustling leaves punctuated his words, a natural rhythm to the unfolding lesson. But beware, the Buddha cautioned, for the unmindful consumption of even the simplest resources can breed attachment and suffering. His tone, though calm, carried a quiet urgency, urging his disciples to heed the lesson deeply. To consume without thought or gratitude dishonors the essence of what sustains and perpetuates a cycle of greed and neglect, the Buddha said. His words carried the weight of universal truth, reaching beyond the boundaries of the assembly to echo through time. Consider this bowl of rice, the Buddha said, gesturing toward the alms food placed before him. Simple yet nourishing. The disciples' gazes followed his gesture, their attention fixed upon the bowl, sensing the significance of the teaching. Each grain represents the labor of many hands, the generosity of countless beings, the bounty of the earth itself, he explained. The Buddha's voice softened, resonating with the interconnectedness of all life, awakening deeper understanding within his disciples. To waste even a single grain is to disregard the effort, sacrifice, and grace that brought it to you, the Buddha added. His gaze rested on the bowl, his words a call to mindfulness in every act of consumption, no matter how small. Monks, the Buddha said, excess is the root of greed, and greed is the root of suffering. Be ever vigilant. The disciples nodded, their hearts aligning with the simplicity and clarity of the Buddha's wisdom. Their resolve strengthening. Discern the line between what sustains and what burdens. For in that discernment lies the freedom of simplicity, he continued. His words carried the essence of liberation, a path illuminated by the practice of mindful consumption and gratitude. Monks, the Buddha concluded, what do you truly need? And what have you falsely learned to crave? The disciples bowed their heads, their silence heavy with introspection, the weight of the question resting deeply upon their hearts. The Buddha's voice softened further, a whisper carried by the breeze. In balance lies harmony, and in harmony lies freedom from the cycle of desire and suffering. The assembly sat in meditative silence, the lesson rippling through their minds like a stone dropped into still waters. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the disciples reflected on their own lives, their consumption, and their gratitude for simplicity. The forest echoed with the wisdom of the Buddha's teaching, a timeless reminder of the path to mindful living. Another day. As dusk settled over Jetavana, the Buddha sat by the glow of a flickering fire. His disciples gathered in quiet circles, their minds calm and prepared to receive his words. The crackling of the fire blended with the distant songs of crickets, creating a harmonious backdrop for his teachings. Monks, the Buddha began, his voice resonating like the echo of wisdom through the evening air. Imagine a farmer sowing seeds. His gaze rested on the attentive faces of his disciples, each one drawn closer by the gravity of his words. If he scatters seeds carelessly without thought or intention, what will sprout in his field? The disciples exchanged knowing glances before one answered, Master, both nourishing crops and invasive weeds will grow, for the farmer lacks mindfulness in his actions. The Buddha nodded with approval, his expression radiating calm satisfaction at the insight shown. Indeed, the Buddha said, our minds are fields, and our actions, thoughts, and consumptions are the seeds we sow. His words carried the weight of timeless truth, resonating within the disciples' hearts like a song of liberation. If we choose wisely, planting seeds of compassion, mindfulness, and wisdom, we cultivate the harvest of peace. But, he continued, if we allow the weeds of ignorance, unskillful desires, and indulgence to take root, suffering shall be our yield. They do not resist the wind, yet they move with it, transforming as they go. The disciples nodded, their gazes following the clouds, a newfound understanding beginning to take shape in their expressions. His voice softened, the firelight dancing across his face like fleeting reflections of illumination. Let me share a story with you about a disciple who once sought my guidance on this path. There was a young man, the Buddha began, who filled his life with tales of violence, idle chatter, and distractions. His disciples listened intently, their focus unwavering, drawn into the unfolding narrative as if witnessing its events themselves. He paid no mind to the teachings of mindfulness and indulged in fleeting pleasures, neglecting the purity of his inner field. This disciple's thoughts became turbulent, his spirit restless, and his harvest nothing but the weeds of confusion and despair. The Buddha said. The fire crackled, its sound punctuating his words with an almost symbolic rhythm of light breaking through darkness. One day, the Buddha continued, the young man approached me, his heart weighed down by the chaos he had sown within. His disciples leaned closer, their breaths almost synchronized with the pauses in the Buddha's narrative. He sought my wisdom, yearning to transform his field and reclaim his peace. I told him, the Buddha said, to begin by consuming with awareness, choosing only what nourishes the spirit and promotes clarity. His disciples' eyes brightened, sensing the simplicity and depth of the guidance offered to the troubled soul. I asked him to reflect on the choices that led him to suffering and to uproot the weeds with diligence. He began by practicing mindfulness in every act, from his speech to his thoughts to the images he allowed into his mind. The Buddha's voice grew lighter, carrying an undercurrent of hope as the narrative reached its transformative arc. Gradually, his field began to flourish, yielding the fruits of compassion, wisdom, and joy. Through conscious consumption, the disciple reclaimed the clarity of his spirit, breaking free from the cycle of suffering. The Buddha's words lingered in the air, their resonance growing stronger with each silent moment that followed. Monks, the Buddha said, his gaze steady and filled with compassion, be mindful of the seeds you sow, for they shape your harvest. His disciples sat in rapt attention, their hearts absorbing the wisdom that flowed like a river through the darkness of night. Just as a farmer tends his field with care, so too must you cultivate your minds with diligent mindfulness. The Buddha's voice seemed to merge with the whisper of the wind, carrying his teachings to every corner of the forest. Do not let ignorance or unskillful desires invade your field, for the weeds of suffering grow swiftly when left unchecked. The disciples nodded in unison, their resolve deepening with each word that fell from the lips of their teacher. But, the Buddha added, his voice lifting with hope, remember that every field, no matter how overgrown, can be restored with effort. The fire's flickering light cast shifting shadows, a visual metaphor for the constant interplay of light and darkness in life. The act of restoration begins with awareness, the practice of consuming only what nourishes and preserves the essence of life. The disciples bowed their heads in gratitude, their hearts illuminated by the profound simplicity of the Buddha's teachings. Monks, the Buddha concluded, live as the farmer who chooses his seeds with care, cultivating the harvest that nourishes all beings. The assembly sat in silence, the fire crackling softly, their meditations steeped in the wisdom of their master's words. As the night deepened and the stars glittered above, the disciples pondered the teachings, their minds fields ready for renewal. The Buddha's gaze swept across the assembly, his presence radiating compassion and peace, an eternal guide toward mindful living. It arises when we see others' joys and sorrows as reflections of our own, inseparable from our being. He reached for a pebble by his side, holding it up for his disciples to see its smooth surface shaped by time and motion. Thank you for watching. Buddha's teachings are always with you. Subscribe to our channel and we will see you in the next video.